Okay, okay. Hey Grayson, how about you use both of these, but you can get a whole bunch of apples now. I can? A whole bunch of them at the same time. Okay, 3 should be good. Okay.
Mom,
So I'll do the
Mom, look how good this apple is, and it's off the ground.
It looks perfect.
Uh-oh. One more.
It's time for our annual Canadian Thanksgiving tradition of pressing apples to make cider. Kim and I have been doing this since before we had kids, so at least 10 years now. It all started when we stumbled upon an old apple press that Kim's aunt had inherited. She hadn't used it in years and it was gathering dust in her garage. At the time, my mom lived in Ontario's apple country near Collingwood. She had an abundance of old apple trees on her farm, but no efficient way to use them. We decided, with Kim's aunt's blessing, to take the apple press and give it a new lease on life. We started pressing apples every Thanksgiving when we'd visit my mom at her farm, and we would bring home multiple batches of cider. Some to ferment into hard cider, and some to freeze and can as fresh cider. My mom has since moved, and this is the first year we're pressing apples from these big trees that came with her new place. We're not sure what varieties they are, but they make pretty good juice. Time will tell how the hard cider turns out, but it has never been completely unpalatable. It's usually pretty delicious, and we can flavor it in any way we want, using leftover sweet fresh cider or some of our homemade syrups. Rhubarb is my favorite. It's always a fun family affair. Last year, we filled the trunk of our SUV with bags of grounders, those are the apples that fall from the tree, from my mom's old neighbor. He's an apple farmer near Collingwood. We pressed them in our driveway in the suburbs and handed out cups of fresh cider to the neighborhood kids. It gathered a nice little crowd of people who were interested in what we were doing. It also always gathers a crowd of wasps. In all the years that we've been doing this, I've never been stung, and Kim hadn't either until this year, and that was only because she was shoving her hands into the mash pail to even it out, and she must have grabbed a wasp. They have absolutely no interest in us as stinky humans. All they want is the apple juice. Wasps are actually pollinators as well, and they're important predators of some of our most annoying garden pest insects. The reason I'm talking about the wasps so much is because, first, I know some of you will leave comments about them if I don't mention it. They do look like they're swarming us in some clips. They're not. And also, they're definitely overindulging and sometimes drowning in the cider. Second, this is all part of growing food in harmony with nature. It's not just the wasps who come to the party. These apples are not sprayed with pesticides, so many of them come with a little extra protein, if you know what I mean. If you're reacting with disgust, that used to be me too. And I would refuse to eat much of the fruit that my mom grew when I was growing up because I had a few bad experiences with worms in my cherries or apples. But now, after years of pressing what were surely some wormy apples and plenty of unfortunate intoxicated wasps, I'm no longer bothered. The cider tastes so good, and there's absolutely nothing about it that would tip you off to the fact that there may be added protein. I'd honestly rather have a few worms in the cores than pesticides on my apples. We do some organic treatment for codling moths, including traps and using a dormant oil spray on the trees in late winter to smother codling moth cocoons. But the coolest discovery my mom made this year was the presence of a predatory wasp that specifically eats codling moths. Balance is the key to everything. Pressing the apples is so easy in this awesome rigged up press. Kim's grandfather installed a motor on the drum, the thing that macerates the apples so that you don't have to manually mash them up. The apples are mashed so you can more efficiently press the juice out of them. All the mash then gets spit into the basket. That's the wine barrel looking thing made of vertical wooden slats. We give the apples a rinse before mashing them just to get rid of any mud that might have been on the grounders, but we're not really worried about creating a sterile environment here. We're outside. We're in the elements. We're not afraid of a little dirt or a few bugs. We're not selling this cider. All we do to keep ourselves safe is to add Camden to the fermenting pail to kill bacteria and inhibit the growth of wild yeasts, and then we add a known purchased strain of yeast to make it ferment. This ensures it's safe and that it tastes good, because some wild yeasts just don't make a very palatable fermented product. For fresh juice, we either pasteurize it by canning it, or we freeze it in jugs right away. I find that pasteurizing it makes it taste a little like basic old apple juice, so I prefer freezing it. However, it does take up a lot of space in a freezer if you're freezing multiple jugs of cider. I do still have 6 liters of canned apple cider from 2023 in my pantry, which I think goes to show how much I prefer the fresh frozen over the canned. So once we have a basket full of mashed apples, we put the plunger or plate on top, line it up with the tip of the rod, and start turning the crank. The crank turns a threaded rod like you're tightening a screw, and then this puts pressure on the plunger and presses the mashed apples in the basket. We use a filter bag to avoid clogging things up with chunks of apple, but we also filter more down the line too. That's how we get the last of the wasps out. The tasting is always the best part. Usually we set up a little table with bourbon and rum and empty glasses, and that's how the grown-ups drink the fresh pressed cider straight out of the drain. We do this cycle of picking, mashing, and pressing on repeat until we have enough to fill our buckets.
Thank you. That's nice. Look at that color. So red, eh?
Yeah. What color?
Color of the juice.
We ended up bringing home one 23-liter pail of cider to ferment. I don't need to be drinking that much alcohol over the winter. And a huge bag of apples for sauce. I didn't save any cider for freezing or canning this year because, as I said, we still have a lot of the non-alcoholic juice from 2 years ago. I also didn't want to be overwhelmed with produce to put up like I was with peaches this year. These apples also keep well in cold storage, so if we want to make apple desserts through the fall and early winter, we'll have enough for that put away in the back of the spare fridge. When it comes to making applesauce, there are lots of variations you can try. My kids prefer a peeled apple with no chunks. I don't add spices because I like to be able to use it for different purposes, like to add hydration to baking recipes. We add cinnamon and maybe some nutmeg when we crack the jar to eat it. I also add a bit of sugar, mostly so it lasts longer in the fridge once a jar has been opened. We have a peeling and coring tool that we got at a thrift store, but before I had this, I'd roughly peel and chop by hand. It's a lot of work, but it's doable. You want to add your apple slices to a pot with a little bit of water, just enough so it doesn't burn to the bottom of the pot, and then you cook it down until it's soft. An immersion blender works well for pureeing it right in the pot you cook it in. And if you want apple butter, keep reducing it until it's thick. I prefer to use the slow cooker to make apple butter so I don't risk burning it. Applesauce is really easy to can. It's one of the most basic things that you can can. You literally just have to cook it down, maybe add some sugar, although I don't think you even have to add sugar for safe canning because apples are sweet and acidic. And then you just put them into your heated jars and you can water bath can them, or I like to use my steam canner because it uses less water, but this is not pressure canning. This is really straightforward entry-level canning. Because I use a steam canner, I don't preheat my jars in water. Typically, if you're water bath canning, you would put your jars in the boiling water of the water bath canner to preheat. And that way you don't end up with thermal shock when you add a hot ingredient to a cold jar. You want them all to be hot or equally hot. So I use my oven to preheat the jars. I usually set my oven to 250. I think 225 can work as well. Just, a safe, low temperature. And I put them in there for up to half an hour, however long it takes me to get everything ready and prepared to fill those jars. I use a basic canning funnel and ladle to fill all the jars. I leave a 1/2-inch headspace. That's the amount of space between the top of the jar and the top of the product you're putting in the jar. That gap of air at the top should be about 1/2 inch. And then if I'm canning pints like I am here, I get them to temperature in my steam canner and let them run at that temperature for 15 minutes. If you're going to do quart jars, it's supposed to be 20 minutes. If you use a water bath canner, this just means that you would put your jars in the water bath canner at a boil for 15 minutes or 20 minutes for quarts. It's always a good idea to leave your canning inside the canner for at least 10 minutes after the time is up and the heat has been turned off. If you take things out too soon and there's this huge temperature change right away, you can have siphoning, which is where the contents of the jar siphon out underneath the lid, and then you probably won't get a seal on it and you have messy water. As for the cider, after the Camden worked its magic killing that bacteria for a day or two, I added some purchased yeast, and then we're just going to let it sit for, upwards of a month and then test the gravity to find out the alcohol content before we bottle it. And that's how we use our homegrown apples. Thanks for coming along. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you'll come and grow with us.